ambiguous with his comments, wasn't he? What's your reading of the Pochettino situation? Do you expect him still to be there come the start of next year?
I do expect him to be there. The possibility whereby he wouldn't be there, and we've talked about this, is I still think he is Juventus's, or he could be Juventus's, really first choice. I know obviously they've got a deal in place with Sarri, possibly, potentially, but I think Pochettino they would view perhaps as a better fit in some ways. Equally though, I don't know that Pochettino would necessarily want to go at this stage. But if I'm Pochettino, the fact that there are other clubs that want me, I want to turn that to my advantage. Not in terms of getting a bigger and better deal at Spurs, because he already has a tremendous deal, but simply in terms of guarantees about the type of investments that are going to be made in the squad over the summer, guarantees over the players like Eriksen and Alderweireld, who obviously have contractual situations, just the kind of assurances from the club that, last summer you said, look, I went along, no signings, fine, I was a good little soldier. This summer, we need to go and we need to put the resources forward, and I need your backing.
Put yourself in Pochettino's shoes, gents. You've done what you've done with Spurs over the past 5 years. New stadium, Champions League final. Juventus come calling this summer. They want you. Do you go? Simple as that.
See you guys later.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And no contest?
Well, it's a no contest in the sense that the project at Juventus, in my mind, would be far more exciting because I think the ambition of Juventus would be greater than that of Spurs. And I'm only saying that based upon from what we have seen. I'm not making this up. We've talked about it all year long that they didn't sign anybody over the summer. And that sort of ambition or lack thereof, if you're Pochettino, you got to think, hold on a second. What project is really going to allow me to then take this whole production to a whole entirely different level? I think he has done as much as he can with Spurs, with this group of players. Now, if there was an investment in a bunch of players, maybe that changes. But what we have seen in the past, it would lead me to believe that Pochettino would say, see you guys later, take care, I'm going to Juventus.
I'd say this. All things being equal, yes, it's a pretty straightforward decision from Mauricio Pochettino. You go to Juventus. I won't go that far, just given Pochettino's own reaction post the semi-final against Ajax. It just said to me that he's a little bit more invested in Spurs, this project, than maybe most managers would be at any football club. And if he can get those guarantees that Gab is talking about from Daniel Levy and Spurs, I think it's more likely that he stays than goes.
The problem with those sort of decisions, Shaq, you're talking about emotion.
Yeah.
If you make an emotional decision and what is a business decision, that's when you get into trouble.
Yeah.
Because you start hanging on thinking, oh no, this is a year that we're going to invest. This is a year that we're going to get the players, and maybe you don't get those players. And so now that Juventus boss just came by, you saw him go by, oh, there he goes, see you guys later, take care, and you didn't take advantage of that. And now you're cutting that in between sort of state where you think, man, there was an opportunity there, and I didn't quite take advantage of it.
Does seem to be a point of inflection, doesn't it, for Spurs? Gab, if Pochettino does stay, and we're looking at their starting 11 from the final yesterday, if Poch stays, what sort of changes can he make or should he make to push Spurs on from this place?
Well, look, right off the bat, you got to make sure that you hang on to the pieces you want to hang on to. And obviously, Harry Kane has a ton of suitors. I've always made the point, I think Harry Kane will stay. But that's what you do first and foremost. You got big decisions, Eriksen and Alderweireld. They will stay on certain terms, but if you can't reach those terms, then you have to sell them. And you have to sell them well, and you need to replace them. For Alderweireld, you already have Foyt and Sanchez in-house, so maybe that's less of an issue in the immediate. But for Eriksen, I think if he does move, you're going to have to spend some money on a very good player who can provide some of the same skill set. You're going to have to work on the fullbacks as well, especially Kieran Trippier. Strong suggestions he might leave, so you need somebody because you probably don't trust Serge Aurier. And you probably also need a little more depth in attack, an alternative to Harry Kane, since Fernando Llorente is obviously not getting any younger and is kind of one-dimensional. So there's a lot of figuring out simply to stay where you are. And then on top of that, obviously Pochettino's going to want to upgrade. And look, and he's going to have to do this against teams that have much higher wage bills and have far outspent Spurs over the last 2-3 seasons.
Can they close that gap? Or is that gap too wide to Man City and Liverpool right now?
Right now, I think that gap is just a little bit too wide to close this season, if we're talking about this season. Quite clearly, Spurs is more of a longer-term project. I think getting to the Champions League final does a lot in terms of convincing Kane to stay, Eriksen to maybe extend, and Alderweireld, etc. Just as an example, if Spurs had gone out in the group stage, let's say, and let's remember it was head-to-head that got them through. I don't see any reason for any of those three to stay on, because you don't feel you're closing the gap on the top two. You don't feel you're making any kind of dent in European football. But now all of a sudden, because you get that break and you make the most of it, these players have a certain belief in that dressing room.
Well, we are closing the gap on the most subscribed YouTube pages on the whole website. Let me tell you, what are we up to? 323,009. Well done to that 9.
Let's get it to 10.
You can keep bang up to date with what's going on in the world of transfers. Our live transfer talk page, constantly updated right there on ESPNFC.com. Gab, a lot of talk at the moment swirling around events in Italy, and particularly when it comes to managerial hot seats. Let's start with Juventus. Maurizio Sarri seems to be inching closer to filling that hot seat.
Well, I think with Sarri, we are where we were the other day, where the intermediary was trying to bring him to Juve. Fali Ramadani came and met with the club and said they wanted to leave, and Sarri himself said the same, and the club were like, okay, gee, thanks for letting us know. We'll get back to you. And suggestions that there's a level of compensation that Chelsea want, and it's a question of whether Juve want to pay it and when they pay it. I think the next update will come probably later in the week, given also that the Juve chairman Andrea Agnelli is going to be pretty busy with the first with the FIFA Congress and then the ECA meeting in Malta. So if there's more direct negotiation to be done, I think he might bide his time a little bit. Plus, there's also the fact that Sarri might not be the very first choice, and they might take a run at Pochettino, or some suggest even Guardiola, although I find that highly unlikely.
Some have suggested that, haven't they? What about two other big... Well, actually, only one of them's officially a vacancy just yet. AC Milan and Roma. Of course, Gattuso has stepped aside at Milan. At Roma, we're not sure about Claudio Ranieri, but what is happening with both those potential vacancies, at least?
Well, taking Roma first, obviously Ranieri's not going to be back. They're figuring out what direction to go in. One name that's come to the fore that a lot of people say that they like a lot is Paulo Fonseca, the Shakhtar Donetsk manager. At Milan, there's been a lot of buzz about Di Francesco. There's been buzz about Gianpaolo at Sampdoria. I get the sense that maybe they're thinking something a little more exotic. But the first step there, Ivan Gazidis came out and said this in an interview late last week, is with the departures of Leonardo and Gattuso, he wants to make sure that Paolo Maldini is on board and that Maldini sticks around in a technical director role with wide responsibilities and is part of this decision-making process. And so I think that needs to happen first.
Which of those two managerial vacancies, Gab, if you had to pick one, would be the most attractive?
I think it depends on the kind of manager you are. Roma's position in terms of finances is actually far healthier than Milan's right now. Milan, let's not forget, have major financial fair play issues, not because of the current ownership group, but because of what happened before in Berlusconi's final season, and then, of course, especially in the year of the snake oil salesman in between. So you could be in a position where you might not get to play Europa League. You might have really serious limits. The club themselves has said, we're going to pursue a policy of youth, of buy low, sell high, or at least buy low and groom these guys to become great players. that kind of talk isn't necessarily going to be very attractive to a manager unless it's somebody who has a track record of doing that. I think a manager who's already more established might prefer the Roma job, where they did sell big ticket items in the past, but they have a lot more flexibility in terms of what they can do in terms of investment.
Well, whoever is at the helm in Milan, in Rome, will be facing Europa League football next year after they finish 5th and 6th. Now, the best of the week, always available on our YouTube channel. This week, of course, so much of it generated from our guys in Madrid. And they stayed up late into the Madrid night to give us their final thoughts post-final.
Thank you very much, Abe. Well, it's been a great few days here in Madrid. Of course, for Stevie, the pinnacle